Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Queensland Performing Arts Centre for the beginnings of an amazing event called Clancestry. I'd just first like to acknowledge the fact that we are on the traditional lands of the Yuggera and Yurubil peoples, and it indeed is an honour to commence this new festival on this site. Clancestry, I guess, is really for us at QPAC about gathering, about coming together, as our ancestry is based on our kinship and our clan groups. So it's absolutely wonderful to see so many people in the room tonight for the first of a series of our conversations. Our program is quite diverse, but it's great to have these conversations. You know, often you'll turn on the television and the stories you hear about us blackfellas can often relate only to Aboriginal issues. Of course, like all Australians, Aboriginal people have opinions on everything. And of course, we all think quite differently too, because we come from very diverse nations across this country and into the Torres Straits. My name is Rhoda Roberts, and I've been had the honour of being appointed by the executive here at Queensland Performing Arts Centre as the guest curator for Clancestry. And we do have our official welcome to country and the blessings of our Elders Council and our Advisory Council. And on Friday night at 6:30, I hope you can join us when we kick off with an amazing opening event with many of our artists involved in the festival over the week, but also many of our local community groups, our students and our college graduates are joining us for that opening ceremony. We have something like 150 students, and it's really a treasure for us because we feel that as we grow this event every year, our young people across this region are going to come and gather like we used to back in the day. So everyone, indeed, a big welcome. Tonight is Postcard Justice for men. So they had to get a black woman to tell you all about them.
Please.
It's a great conversation to have. As I said, often the news is only depicted from one perspective. And our host tonight is Mr. Wesley Enoch. Many of you, of course, know this new knuckle man, but he is an extraordinary person. To me, Wesley is not only a brother and a colleague, but I think he is one of our resounding knowledge keepers. It's through the stories he tells, whether they're on the stage, the screen, or the small screen, that keeps our culture relevant and alive. And so it's wonderful to have you, Wesley, and I really appreciate that you are able to conduct this tonight. Wesley, of course, is the current artistic director of Queensland Theatre Company. He's also a former trustee of the Sydney Opera House, a director, well, we'll talk about the rest later. And of course, after the conversations, we will have time for questions and answers, which I'm sure you'll have many of. I'll hand over now to Wesley to introduce the panel, but before we go any further, as you know, the rains have hit Queensland and northern New South Wales. It is a way of cleansing the site, ready for a great event. Think positive. But unfortunately, Mr. Chris Sara, one of our amazing leaders, is unfortunate that he can't make it tonight, and he does send his sincere apologies. He lives in Caboolture. There are a few bridges up that way, and they do overflow with water when there's a bit of rain. So unfortunately, he's actually flooded in, so he couldn't make it. So I'm sure you can understand that. So Wesley, thank you. Big welcome to all you gentlemen, and Wesley will give you a great introduction. Have Excellent. A great evening.
Thanks, Rhoda. First of all, I'd just like to also, just this place is really significant. If you think back, we only needed a little bit of a reminder a couple of years ago. This was all a floodplain along this way, and it was always a place that there was plenty of tucker. And if you read some of the Tom Petrie diaries, there's conversations, recollections of people crossing the river at certain parts are over here, you know, carrying their children above their head, or you know, just treading water across. This place was always a gathering place, and Musgrave Park, which is just up on the just on the high slope there, was always a place you would gather because you could get lots of tucker here, and you could do culture and tell stories. So I think it's significant that they built an art centre here and a cultural place, the South Bank here, and That's part of the inheritance of this place. It's something that's come to this place and that we continue it here with Clancestry as well. So it's wonderful that it's here. Yes, my name's Wesley Enoch. I'm the Artistic Director of Queensland Theatre Company, and it's my job to host tonight. We're going to talk for about, up here as a panel, for about half an hour, thereabouts, and make sure that we then open up to questions from the floor or even statements from the floor. I should say to everyone that this is being recorded, so if you do speak, please wait for a microphone, and you are giving you permission, if you like, for it to be recorded. I know that 4AAA, Aboriginal radio station here, which Tiger works for, is recording it with the view to putting it onto the radio. So these stories, this conversation can go beyond just this room. These conversations are so much more important than just us sitting here. How do we tell as many people as we can? So please, afterwards, you might just have to, if you speak into a microphone, you might just have to someone will grab you and just to sign a little release form. Just have to give over your firstborn and things like that. That was much funnier in my head, but we're grateful that it came out. My job is just to introduce the panel here at the moment. Well, not in order here. Elwyn Doolan, who's over here, is a Gukul Yalaji man with Cherbourg connections, and he grew up in Kingston and Woodridge and Inala. Yeah. Elwyn is a proud father of 5 and strongly committed to his family, his work, his community, and particularly young people reaching their full potential. He writes here, Elwyn is a support worker at the 139 Club in Fortitude Valley. It's a drop-in centre, and it's the biggest in Queensland for homeless people and those in crisis. He works with all clients, many cultures and issues, and believes his role is a positive support to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander clients. Please welcome him. Here, cousin, here now. Steve Goggle is a Gurrumpul Yagara man who grew up here, grew up in Inala and North Straddie. Steve is dedicated to helping youth reach their potential. He's a qualified fitness instructor. Security, crowd control and youth justice. Steve loves footy, gym, sports and reading. Has worked as security and community functions like Style and Up, and with the Aboriginal and Islander Sport and Recreation Association, working with youth in promoting sport, health, recreation, and Steve now is working with the Brisbane Youth Detention Centre. Please give him a round of applause. To my right here is Superintendent Noel Powers. He joined the force in 1975. I was 6.
I don't want to know that.
Yeah. He joined as a cadet, and his service with the Queensland Police has been with postings throughout Queensland, some of which have been in remote 1 and 2 officer stations and Indigenous communities, predominantly in the north of the state. In January 2011, Superintendent Powers took up his current position as the District Officer of the Logan Police District. During his time at this position, he has had extensive involvement with the many cultural communities within the city and is committed to ensuring the partnership between the police and the many communities and their representatives remains strong and resilient. So please welcome him here tonight.
Thank you very much.
Last but certainly not least, the very impressive Tiger Bales. I can't read this. This is too long. I know Tiger personally as well from all his work with Aboriginal radio stations, the Murray School. The work you've done nationally in terms of media has been extraordinary, Tiger. And he's one of those people, and you'll hear him speak tonight. If you haven't heard his voice, it resounds in you with a sense of truth and honesty. And it's a wonderful sense of that voice now being amplified through radio. And I think it's a wonderful addition to this conversation. He is, and people will absolutely know his beloved mother, Auntie Maureen, who passed away a number of years ago now, isn't it? What, 5?
About 5, I think.
5.
Yeah.
You know, who was, if there was a woman who understood voice, it was Auntie Maureen. She understood through her poetry and her power, and I think it's no accident that Tiger here has inherited that sense of voice. He's currently serves as the chairperson of the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council. Currently. Watch out, you own too much.
That's about 23 years ago.
Oh, was it? He moved to Brisbane. He works with Murray Radio there. I'm just skipping through because it's very long. Oh yeah, he's too deadly. Just say he's too deadly. Give him a round of applause. Right. Just to start us off with the panel, I wouldn't mind asking a little bit about where you came from, and do you think that where you came from helped make you who you are today? Steve, I want to start with you.
Okay. I grew up in Anala. It was a fun place to grow up back then. As a kid, it was very community orientated. My parents were both from there, and everybody sort of knew everybody, so it was good fun. You had your footy club, Wandara Preschool was a fun place to go. A lot of the Murrays in that from Stratty and Anala were sort of interconnected. Growing up, you'd say, this is your cousin, this is your brother, like auntie, uncle, and that, So it was a fun place to grow up.
Why do you think there are lots of Murrays in Anala? What do you think attracted them to that particular place?
I don't know, I guess it was so isolated from everywhere, and it was, it started off as a service town for ex-servicemen. Then from what I know, they started up like a housing co-op, and they were helping Indigenous people, as well as then they opened it up to other immigrants from England and where have you. It was like a real working class suburb and stuff, and a lot of Murrays were working in around the blue collar industries and stuff, and Anala was like the heart of the blue collar industry.
If you were to think about growing up in that community, what do you think helped shape who you are today?
Survival. Without exaggerating or going overboard, it's growing up in Anala. Kids that grow up there grow up quick. You learn a lot of things at an early age, and you get to learn and see a lot of things. And
like what? What are you saying? See things?
In regards to drugs and alcohol, violence and stuff, but some get swept up in that. Some start turning to crime for their needs and for their expression. Others sort of just fight on and always remain optimistic amongst all the chaos to try to better themselves and represent in a positive, strong way.
And you're one of those people?
I try to be, yeah. I try to do my best in that. Although I'm not perfect and I've made a lot of mistakes, but I try to always better myself and try to help my people as much as I can, my family as much as I can, and try to make sure the next generation coming through doesn't repeat, doesn't have it. We don't see history repeat again, because too many times in Anala, I've seen history repeated with family, friends, and it's sad, but it's character building too. Like you realise that you can still do it, but it takes a lot of hard work, and if you don't give up, like anything, you keep on fighting on, keep on.
Where do you live now?
I've just recently moved out of Anala, but I'm over at the next suburb over there at Goodna and that now. So it's more or less Anala by the river, because I see everyone down there. I go down the shops and then I still see the same old faces. And hey, what are you doing here? You following me? You stalking me? And that, so.
I'm coming for the river view.
Yeah.
It's interesting if you think about the corridor that goes from Logan, which is let's say Kingston, or maybe down towards Beenleigh, but let's say Kingston through like Logan Lee, Woodridge, and you come across through Darra and around through to Anala, Goodna. That little area there's a lot of public housing. And in fact, in this state, it's within the top 5, I think, in terms of public housing. Yep. So if you put your name down and you want a place to live quickly, you go to those places. And it's one of those places that lots of people who are coming to the country for the first time or need housing, emergency housing, that's where you go first up.
Although, since now that, as a kid, we used to play in the bush there, Elwyn too, when we were all kids, and there used to be a billabong there. We used to run amok in the bush where Forest Lake is now. We commonly nicknamed it Forest Mistake. Just a thing from us local residents, because what they've done now is, because in order to, I don't know, from my perspective, my point of view, just me as an individual speaking, that because Analis had such a reputation of a lower class area and stuff, I don't feel it was. I'm happy to say I'm from there, and it's a great place to grow up. But now that Forest Lake is next door and it's a more upper class type suburb, they're sort of pushing out the housos now, or the Housing Commission, all the pensioners and that, and they sort of want to push them out further, and even amongst Goodna and stuff like that. And it's housing there is becoming more. That's the reason why I had to go. It wasn't for me as an individual, as a single man. I couldn't afford to live there anymore, and stuff. And
well, we'll come back to this because I'll talk to some of the rest of the panel. I'll come back. Tiger, I'm going to come over to you. You moved around a lot when you were younger. How did growing up in a particular town, community, how did it shape you?
Well, I grew up on the banks of the Dawson River, Theodore.
That voice. Sorry, Tiger.
Theodore is directly west of Bundaberg, about 120k or so. Little town. My last year of school was 68. I was in year 10. I was born in 53. I couldn't catch a school bus in 66, 67, 68. It was for whites only. So I had to walk to school. Just to get into blues with kids in school, with the white fellas, and then I'd fight the Murrays on the way home because we no longer lived on the riverbank. So I didn't know who I was, a black fella, white fella. And I came to Brisbane in 1969 and 70 to get that sorted out. But growing up there I wasn't taught, I didn't know that my grandfather, Sam Watson, a Wirri man of the Birri Nation, he was taken from Nebo and made a slave. He was 5-year-old. So slavery's happened in this country as a part of our history, and a lot of you mainstream Australians don't know that. It's not in the history books. So not knowing about my culture, about the experiences of my grandfather on my mum's side, and my grandmother on my dad's side was a horsewoman, a Murray woman from Eidsvold, Mundubra, Gayndah area. So we lived a lot on bush tucker. Mum and Dad made sure we went to school. 15-year-old, year 10, that was it. Out and work in the sawmill the day after the junior exam finished in 1968. And was work ever since.
What values do you think growing up in that place, that family, that community, what have you learned and carried on to what you do now?
Well, old Sam Watson, my grandfather, died when I was about 12, 13. And my dad always said, "You'll never be a bludger. You work. Whatever you want, you work for. Stealing, or as I say, borrowing, even though we forget to take it back. That's not a part of who we are as a family, as a people. Never compromise your principles, your values. Walk tall, be proud, and carry yourself in an honourable way, with integrity and honour and pride." That didn't sink in a lot until I got quite a bit older. I'm 60 next birthday. I've only just learnt that in the last few years, I suppose. But those values of sharing, I mean, I've got 4 younger brothers and a baby sister that I didn't meet until I was about 30, and she was about 15. Same father. And looking after the younger ones. I learnt to drive a truck, a tractor, a car at 9, 10-year-old. Coppers first pinched me at 9 or 10 I was, driving.
Wasn't me.
Out
I'm not game enough to.
out on the road while Mum's nursing the baby brother Michael, and I'm behind the wheel of the FE ute, the Holden ute. He was cooked, the baby, he was vomiting and stuff. Mum said, "You better drive." I learnt to shoot a .22 rifle at 10-year-old, all that sort of stuff. So you learn those sorts of things early in life. You learn to hunt, you learn to look after your little brothers, you learn to take on board, getting up, make the wood fire. We never had electricity. Make the fire, cook the porridge, feed everybody, while the next younger brother was out milking the cows and bringing the fresh hot milk in straight from the yard or in the bucket onto the table with the porridge, that sort of stuff. You learn those responsibility and taking care and making sure that we all have enough, that nobody misses out. Those are some of the key things.
It seemed like you were talking then just about the police. That were there other threats to that kind of world for you? Not to demonise the police, I'm sorry, but you know, what kind of threats did you see to that world?
Oh, things weren't. I can remember as a young fellow, 5 and 6 year old, some bad, well, not necessarily bad things, but freaky things happening. Our mob, there's only 5 or 6 families lived on the riverbank, but in those days pubs weren't open on Sundays. Well, they were for sessions. I think it was 11 till 1 and then 4 till 6. And Murray's couldn't get a drink, couldn't go into the pub and get a beer, so they'd send in the white fella they worked with or somebody they knew, or might have been married to or something, to get a beer. And in between those sessions, those couple of those coppers would go down to the Murray tents, the camp, and cut the ropes down, and the cars would scream around the tents, and the women and kids would be running around screaming, because there weren't any or few men around. They were all out on Sunday afternoon chasing kangaroo, porcupine, guana, and getting a feed. I remember seeing that sort of stuff and the harassment of family. My mother coming in a truck, because my mum and dad always worked, and they were bag sowers, bulk wheat. Wheat was put in bags. It was harvested, put in bags, and you had to dump the wheat bags, and then you'd top them up and sow them. And I used to sit there with a roll of twine wrapped around. I'd have to thread the needles because the bag sower got paid per bag that they sowed, or per 100 a day. And Mum would come in off the trucks, got a ride into town, all grubby and dirty, and jumped out of the cafe. Only one cafe in town. Nicked the Greeks, the fish shop, and pulled up there get something to eat and a drink. And local copper, new in town. Who are you? What's your name? What are you doing in town? That was the small country town attitude and feeling that was common in those small country towns, because, like I said, there's only a few of us in town, in the families. So I saw that sort of stuff. Came on to Brisbane in 69, 70, like I say, and learnt more about mobilising our mob, learnt more about who I was and how we weren't faring too well, understanding the politics of the system.
We'll come back to that, I think, too. When Noel and I were talking just before, my brother joined the police service, I think, a year or so ago.
Yeah, a year ago.
And works with this one here now. So I'm going to claim him up as family for a little while. But you're in Logan now, and I know we're going to talk about it soon. I'll come to you in a second, Alan. But there was a lot of issues in Logan recently.
Yeah, quite recently.
I mean, these kind of stories you're hearing now about people growing up, and are they the similar things that you saw and hear in Logan all the time? Or?
Look, that was really just an isolated incident, if I can put it that way. And I understand there was a lot of background to it that I suppose a lot of people either chose to ignore or just simply didn't see. And I think what happened then was just really a flashpoint. All the materials were there. There was a lot of feeling. It was like tinder. There was a lot of tinder around. A spark came to it, and off she went.
I know
it erupted just on that one night. But look, and I'll say publicly in this forum here, if it wasn't for this man's involvement, him and Offa from the Tongan family, that wouldn't have resolved as quick as what it does. So I applaud him publicly. I thank you very much publicly. And really, I'll digress a little bit, but that was just like, it was Tiger and Offa came together, they got the families together, and something happened that doesn't happen too much these days. They talked. They talked to each other instead of via mediums and interested people. And it was like, it really was, it was a blessing, wasn't it? The way I feel it just calmed the whole thing down. People thought, that's it, let's move on.
And it happened in about an hour.
Yeah, it did.
Under the street lights in that car park at 7 o'clock one night.
It's the way you should. Just get together, sit down, talk. And,
There was no flash meeting room.
I tried.
I grew up in Logan. I grew up on Carey Avenue. My parents still live there now, and the cousin here in the front, well, auntie really. What's that?
Been there 41 years.
41 years my family have been there. And all that kind of world. And I've noticed over the last, let's say, 4 years, there's that death of that fellow who got bashed up a couple of years ago now in that park. and there was, you know, Pacific Islanders bashed up this fellow, and older fellow, and passed away. And then I think about the house fire that was in Slacks Creek, which is, if people don't know Logan, it's in Logan basically, it's just next to Woodridge. And then more recently, that poor fella who, in front of a train, and he's passed away from that train. And now this moment, and for me, I can see a line, I can see a connection through them all too, that there's an ongoing kind of tension and connection to particular places, that people are always coming together. I'm going to go over here now to Elwyn. I go, you know, you grew up in Kingston and Woodridge.
Yeah.
I mean, did you ever feel those kind of tensions, different cultural groups, different tensions there?
Yeah, I did. I did actually, you know, feel those, feel those tensions and that. And yeah, just as I mentioned before, with that, with that young fellow who passed away, that was actually my younger brother, which was a very hard time for me around that time, towards the end of Christmas and that. I just really found it, found it pretty tough, especially, especially when you try to take into consideration, so many different ethnic groups, different cultures and different, point of views, and cultural beliefs, and perspectives and all that, and you put them all in one place. Of course, you're going to find a lot of people not going to agree with each other, and and you could see that sort of happening, like on and off again, but not as big as it has been, previously,
what do you
or
think,
recently, I should say.
What do you think recently that some of these, well, look, they're getting more media attention, so we can't really say that they are bigger than anything that's gone before.
Yeah.
They just seem to be more public at the moment.
Yeah.
Do you ever feeling that these tensions are bigger, and what might be causing them?
Well, to be honest with you, I think that the reason why these issues are getting bigger is because, the Polynesian families and stuff are getting bigger, and they're a strong network, and they're very confident and actually, proud people, in who they are. And I'm not to say that our people are not proud of who we are, but there's a lot of issues within our culture that has to get resolved. And I mentioned that previously at a meeting that we had at Kingston, I think just after my brother passed away, about, everybody sort of looking at the blame game, and saying, oh yeah, this one did that and this one did this and that. And, and I just pretty much got up and said, well, look, at the end of the day, we can blame everyone, but, it comes back to in our own homes, are we looking after our families? Are we looking after our people? Are we there to support our people and stuff? And I've sort of found, like, with myself, growing up, from a very humble home, and also growing up with a single mother, is that a lot of young Indigenous kids today are growing up fatherless, without a father around, or living with Nan or living with Auntie because mother can't look after them because she's got a drug or alcohol addiction and problems, and she just keeps having babies and passing them off to, this family member, that family member. So you can see that, even though, like, in the media and public eye, like, it looks like, that there's all this funding, that there's all this support, around Aboriginal issues, and that, all the help is there, and, why aren't these people doing anything? I think the funding's going to the wrong places. I think they're expecting, all our people to just sort of rock up to these places, especially our young people, and to just get involved, and to engage, and to start making something happening for their life, and it doesn't seem to be that way. I think we need, like, a more close network of support people that can actually be kind of like caseworkers and stuff that will, that will go and engage with our young people and actually see how they're going at school. Oh yeah, you're going with this, you're good. Do you need help with this? you know, how you going at home, how's your footy track, just to make sure and to make sure that they're sort of going along and that they're constantly doing these things. And the reason why I can say that so boldly and so comfortably is that, you know, that was exactly, you know, similar upbringing to what I had. You know, well, I had a lot of, like a lot of family members, you know, like had alcohol and drug problems and mental health issues, you know, problems with, you know, around poverty, education, and that I was the first person in my whole family, from aunties and uncles and you know, even grandmother and that too as well, and even my own mother, to actually finish high school. So that was a big thing. And the most hardest thing that I found is, you know, is not having a positive role model around me, and having to try to learn things on my own, which thankfully education has sort of helped. So that's the one good thing that my mother always taught me, was just to, you know, make sure you get a good education and that you become, you know, that you that you be able to come a little bit more smart and make, you know, wiser and better decisions in life. And I think going through that experience, just like what Brother Stevie was saying, like I grew up with him in Anala, and I was pretty much moved around the place, Nala to Low, and I lived up in Sherbrooke for a little while, up in Townsville for a little bit, Warrabinda, so I've sort of been around the place. The one thing that really stuck was education. So for me to get an education, I sort of realised that I can now be on the same playing field as everyone else, and that I do have the equal opportunity and right to actually make something of my life.
I'm going to interrupt you there, because you're talking about, like, the title of this session is Postcode Justice, but the idea that there's maybe a different level of justice or surveillance or whatever, depending on what postcode you go to. What you're also saying there is that hopefully that comes with postcode kind of services as well. Like, you can identify where people are and what they might need to do. It's interesting that there are about 500,000 New Zealanders living in Queensland at this point in time, if you look at the latest census. Anecdotally, that's a lot of economic and environmental refugees from the Pacific who come through New Zealand because of our immigration laws, and then come and stay in Queensland because of, I think, you know, climate is similar, there's already families here that they can connect with. And so we're seeing this influx of different people from the Pacific, and they are automatically attracted to certain suburbs, I think, because of the availability of housing, but also because of this, you know, postcode magnet that happens. Some family moves in, the rest of the families kind of move in around them as well. Does that create a certain level of surveillance, a certain level of observation of trends and things in that particular suburb? I'm going to come over to you, Uncle, here. Noel?
Before you do,
please do.
that 500,000 people from New Zealand and Queensland is the equivalent to our national figures.
Absolutely.
500,000 of us First Nations people are in this country, and yet you have 500,000 New Zealanders in Queensland alone.
So, I mean, is it true that there's more surveillance in these particular suburbs, do you think?
Look, I'd be a fool to say no, and I mean by surveillance, I believe you're talking sort of, you know, what we're talking CCTV footage, or we're talking
but also
just,
I think
just general observation.
Observation, yeah.
Look, I think there is, and unfortunately, and I really mean that, the media have just discovered that in some aspects Logan is a very news-rich environment. We saw that with the unfortunate incident at the beginning of December. We saw that just with the incident that happened in Woodridge at the beginning of January. They love that, and that brings with it a negative perception. It brings with it publicity that we can afford to do without. So, and you know, getting back to the theme of this is, people do associate Logan. They go, oh, hang on, there's problems down there, and it's not. They say that because A, they've never lived there, B, they don't have a desire to want to go and experience the culture that happens there, and C, there's just this boogeyman element that's been built up by negative publicity, and obviously some negative stories that come out of the place as well too. I said I've lived majority of all over Queensland, a number of instances. I lived for 4 years at Ipswich, and it used to get my back up when people say, oh, where do you live? No, I said, I live at Ipswich. And they go, oh, what are you going to live there for? my response was, because that's where my wife and my family are, and have you ever lived there? No, I haven't. Well, then you can't step in my shoes because you don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And it really does get my back up when people do categorise an area simply because it is that area, simply because of a postcode. To me, it shows it's shallow. They haven't got the depths of understanding or the desire to want to understand what goes on. And picking up on what Owen said there, look, it is a very, very culturally rich environment. It's one of the most culturally diverse cities in Australia, with 215 nationalities and ethnicities. Samoan is the second most spoken language in that area there. We're now a major staging post or deployment post or housing area for majority of refugees, be it on humanitarian visas or other type of visas they come to the country. They put those people in there. I personally, what I've seen is there is friction, yes. I'd be a fool if I said it wasn't. You know, the people from the United Nations can't sit down and agree or compromise on a number of issues, and these are educated, well-travelled and well-versed people. So, of course we're going to have the trouble, of course we're going to have the issues, but picking up from what I've noticed as a result of that, Alan Brothers' unfortunate incident, and it's really, to me, it's just quite simple, is the First Nation people, as traditional owners, it's their land, it's their country. Way I see it, all they're asking for is you can come and you can share our country with us, you can share what we have, but respect who we are and what we are. The traditional owners, the people are entitled to that respect, and they earn it as well too. They deserve it, and unfortunately, in some instances, it's not forthcoming. So I think that's a problem, and I'm more than a willing partner to try and instill that as well too, is to be respectful of who you are and where you are.
It's fascinating that particular city, Logan, is named after a particular governor of Queensland who met his end being speared by a group of Aboriginal people, Patrick Logan. Yeah, so you kind of think, maybe it's got a history there of kind of looking at all that
he did
stuff.
something to deserve it.
He did it indeed. Now, we've already been talking for about 35 minutes, which is amazing because I could sit and listen to everyone for ages. We do have to open up to questions because I know people are here burning to ask things, and I hope that you can ask questions of the panel. So if you can wait for the microphone to get to you, if you want to put your hands up, here, right at the front here now, auntie in the front. Yeah. Just introduce yourself a little bit, maybe even where you come from, and just address the crowd.
Hi, my name's Rebecca and I'm from Armidale, New South Wales. I've been living in Brisbane for about 9 years now, and about 10 years ago I was having arguments with my family because there were sort of rumours in our family that even though we're just ordinary white middle class Australians, we might have some Aboriginal ancestry. And I started saying, well, that might be true. And everyone said, shut up, Rebecca. And then when I said something to someone outside of our family, I was totally ostracised from my family. And that's only just begun to resolve now. Within about a year, I had a relationship with a black man. And
we're good, aren't we?
Some of the married Aboriginal women gave me 2 rules, right?
Yeah.
I was given 2 rules. One rule was, as a woman, never to go alone into a house full of men and be the only woman present. I've followed that rule to a T, right? 2, if a man was to hit a woman as many as 3 times, the woman has an obligation to leave that relationship. And if she stays in a relationship with him after a 3rd hit, then she's in trouble herself with her people, with her elders, right? So many years down the track...
Do you have a question you might want to ask the panel at all?
I do.
I'll wrap you up, get you to the point then. Yep.
A couple of years ago, the 3rd hit from a fella came, a different fella this time, right? And he's somebody who had hit many different women, and he
hit you?
Yeah, and he'd lasted
and
in a relationship with me.
You left him?
Yep, he'd
Good
lasted in a relationship with me for longer than he had with anyone else for many years, right? And I thought, okay, well, that's that. And he started being threatening, and I just walked out of my house. It was my house, my public housing tenancy. I walked out down the street with bare feet because there was no way I could secure anything except my body. I got myself down to the nearest public phone and I rang 000. And in my immediate local environment, I didn't feel like I had any safe neighbours or anything. I rang 000. The police came and I had to have an argument with the police because a policeman said to me, in Aboriginal cultural custom, women are expected to put up with domestic violence. You poor thing, you poor white girl, you've been hit by a black man. We're going to take sympathy on you, but you know we're not going to be able to stop him. And I had an argument.
Tiger,
with
do you
him,
want to respond to this?
And I don't want to. I don't want to.
I'm going to put it
right.
so we can respond, so the panel can come to you.
Yeah.
Tiger, do you want to respond at all to this?
Well, it's not a part of our culture, violence, brutalising our children, our women. It's not a part of our culture.
Exactly.
But it has become a part of our lifestyle for a lot of us, some of us, not a lot, some of us, it has become a part of lifestyle due to frustrations, due to a whole range of things within the circumstances that we live. It's not acceptable, it's not that you cannot condone it, and it's not a part of our culture. It's something that we've learned since colonisation.
No, I am going to stop you because I want to make sure lots of people get to talk tonight.
Yeah,
But thank you very much. Come and have a yarn to us afterwards, after all this kind of stuff, because I think that it's a big thing to talk through.
Please.
Is there another question? I saw someone at the back. Who's up there? Up the back there. Make you work hard. Run up the back for us. Excellent. But yeah, we can have a yarn later.
Hello everyone, my name's Kayla Tyson. I'm a Marooney woman of the Gurung Nation and I lived in the Logan West suburb of Browns Plains for about 20 years of my life. I've just recently started a campaign called the No More Lives Lost campaign, and that was in response to all the things that have been happening in Logan in the last couple of months. But that's what triggered my thoughts, because in 2001 my friend got murdered down at Coco's in Kingston, and since then, when brother Jackson passed away, I sat down and I thought, I made a list, and I had been to over 40 funerals since 2001. 4 of them were killings in the Logan area, 10 or more were suicides, and probably at least half of what was left over were what I believed to be preventable health issues. So that's why I came up with the campaign, and basically it's just to instill in people, like Alwyn was saying, that it starts with us first, and that it's about thinking positive and all of that. But we have an exhibition called the Logan State of Mind coming up in May, and I just wanted to ask for all of you, whether you're from Logan or not, but particularly from Logan, what were your dreams as young people growing up? And even though you were in a low socio-economic place, I can relate to your story. We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't, a lot of people looked down on us. But if anything, I think that made us more ambitious to succeed. But yeah, are there any comments that you would like to make, and anything that you'd like to say about what you see for the young people
Excellent.
now?
Elwyn.
Yeah, I'd just like to first say that, well, for myself, I think what actually made me want to strive and to, and to be successful and to, and to be, to really sort of, to get to where I am today. I think it comes back to the passion and the strengths that I have within myself. And I think the main thing that actually really helped me was the one thing that upset me and that infuriated me the most. And that was unresolved issues with all these different family members in my, in my house, with aunties and uncles and everything like that.
When you say unresolved, you mean?
Like with, unresolved, drug and alcohol addiction, mental health.
So you're living in a house with these
but with all
issues.
these things.
Yeah.
And the most ironic thing about it is that where I work with people with all these similar issues, And I'm really good at doing that. Like when I first started there, my manager actually said to me, he said, "Oh, Ellen, are you going to be okay?" And then after a week, I just said, "This just feels like home. I feel like I'm just coming to a social club, you know. I've got, you know, I had an uncle with the same issue like this and mental health, you know, and this one here." I said, "This is just great, you know." And I think it really led me, which was funny and ironic, because I think when you find your place on where you're supposed to be, I think it's just effortless, and I think your skill can actually emerge and start to sort of take its showcase. So
that's the key, isn't it, about skills?
Yep.
You're talking about who has the skills to talk through, to analyse, to, if you like, break the chain of whatever kind of disadvantage there is, to move on. Right. How do you get those skills? And I think, Elwyn, you were talking about education being a really important part.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
I mean, Tiger, you've worked a lot in Indigenous education. I remember you talking about the sense of when they left the Murray School, there's often really high achievers, like incredibly high achievers. I mean, I think us sitting here, you can claim that too, quite high achievers in that way. Does everyone learn those skills?
I think the foundation for it is to be strong in your culture and identity. For us as First Nations people, if we can't get that identity and cultural identity in place and know who we are and feel strong and proud of who we are, we're continually, like I was until I'd left home, fighting with black fellas, fighting with white fellas, not knowing the stories of my people. That cultural identity, if we can get that right and instilled in our young ones, we can achieve anything.
It's a tension. I think there's a real, as Aboriginal people, we are shapeshifters. We've got a culture at home, we've got a culture on the street, we've got a culture that's at work, and how do you, I see people nodding their head here now, you shape yourself into the environment and you go, oh, how do I fit there?
You've got to be able to live in two worlds.
More than two.
Murray world, mainstream world. And we've got to be able to code switch and chop and change.
Definitely. I can relate to that, Tiger. Like, my dream growing up, see, I grew up, me, my mum, my little sister, Kayla, and my old man wasn't around for the first 10 years of my life, and then my idea of my dream was to be, I didn't want for anything. I didn't want to. I want to own a house. I grew up in a housing commission house. I want to own a house, something to call my own. You know, I want to have a good job. I want to represent for my culture. Though I had uncles and that around, my dad's family and that around, and Dad was still was a part of my life. He came in and that. I went to live with him when I was 10, and then that's when I got what Tiger was saying, more of a cultural identity of who I am, where I'm from. Had only Kerry, Charlton, educate me also on stuff. Grabbed me a couple of times for my pretty poor attitude, but I could thank her for that now. But that was my dream, just to help our people and to not have a family and then not have them want for anything.
I'm hearing that as a theme, isn't it? The sense of saying the more sense you have of family, or if you like a family alternative, be that some kind of care, some kind of person who can provide skills for you to articulate your environment that you're in, is what's needed often. And
also, just touching on cultural identity, working in the Brisbane Youth Detention Centre, a lot of these kids in there, the Murray kids in there, sadly we overpopulate, we're overrepresented in there, and sadly a lot of them don't know who they are, where they're from. You know, you got a lot of, there's no girls' detention centre up north, in North Queensland, so a lot of them got to come from places like Arakoon and all that, and Bumagara and all that, and down to Brisbane, and they don't know this place, they don't know what's going on. And even I talk to young boys and girls, and then some of them say that being a black fella is they got to smoke, they got to drink, they got to fight, they got to do crime,
the urban initiation.
And I said, and I try to push for a full-time cultural education class in there, in the to my management and stuff like that. But there's a bit of red tape there, and they're not really sure what to go. But these kids, when we do have dancers in there that show them corroboree, that talk about hunting and gathering, And then we turn it around, okay, so from 200 years ago to now, our way of hunting and gathering is to get educated, go out, get a job, provide for your family. And it's like a whole new world to them. It's like, you know, the bubble's been shattered, and they realise, wow, I can be a black fella and not do crime. I can be a black fella, and I said, yeah. And you know what? And I tell every one of them, you fellas, you be proud of who you are. You know where you're from. You're Murrays. You're of this nation here. This is our home, our country. All right, you fellas. I said, some of them, oh well, sir, I'm shame. I don't know how to dance. I don't know. I said, it doesn't matter. I said, your Aboriginality isn't skin deep. It's a state of mind. It's a spiritual thing. Okay. And you know, if you listen and learn, you to be warriors, not a slave, not slaves to the system and slaves to the jails and
There's
stuff.
a question here first, and then the gentleman up there. So this further, and then up there.
It's more a statement. Is that all right?
Please do.
Okay. Kane Atwana is my name. I'm a proud Meriam man from the Meriam Nation. I'm from Kuwait village, and our village actually adjoins Uncle Kwiki Mambo's village, and that's what put our little community on the map. And I'm a bit intimidated here because I'm always intimidated by Tiger. And, he's sort of sitting
That's
right
just
there
good
too.
sense, man. That's good sense.
And, but I've talked to Tiger, and I said, brother, I might write a play about this man because I'm going to call him the first Tiger. And nobody take that either. It's copyrighted. But can I just say very quickly that, you know, and I'm really enjoying this, by the way. And I acknowledge the men here and my brother, the Bulliman here. I acknowledge you too, and having the guts to come here and face us.
Here.
It ain't easy. And you know, and the reason you're in Logan, running Logan Police Station, is because of you don't learn that stuff at college. It comes from your heart, brother. You're talking your spirit. And what I want to talk about is what we're seeing here is evidence. It's not a black issue. It ain't a black issue. It's a human issue. If the Persians invaded England in the 1600s, took away their land, took away their language, took away their children, and told the English, you are shit, you are scum, you are nothing, the English would have the same issues we are now seeing in Logan and just about every other playing field in this country. It is not a black issue. Black issue sells newspapers. Newspapers and the media are the backbone of commercialism in the world. The very impact, he's intimidating me, I'm shaking here now. Plus I get very emotional about this. Ooh, shaking. Because we need to do something about resurrecting our people's identity.
Yep.
Returning identity, what these gentlemen are talking about.
That's right. Yep.
Because, like I said, the English, if they would have lost their identity, they'd be talking about the French coming over, taking up their little land and little fights. So the issue is actually, these are symptoms of human spirit. They talk about massive weapons of destruction. It ain't the bombs. You bomb a country, you'll still get men and women fighting. But you go to a country, invade them and tell them they're shit, they won't fight. You take everything that's sacred to them. Return country back to people, put them on the map, heal people. Generational trauma, that's what we're talking about.
It's interesting. It's almost like that. That's the
Better stop me. I'm going to go all.
Oh no. It's well done. It's almost a central story in this country. I mean, I make it's a very light joke kind of thing, but one of the reasons why we are so confronted by boats coming here is that the last time a lot of boats arrived, the whole economic system just changed. We have this thing about people arriving on boats because we have this unresolved story in the back of our head, which is about people arriving. And we have a central myth, which is, well, up until 1993, not acknowledging that Indigenous people were even here, the Terra Nullius myth. So it still plays out over and over again. We have, this might even be our last question. Let's find out.
Thank you.
I see you up there. Yep.
Yeah, Wayne Sanderson. I'm a volunteer with Amnesty International.
Welcome.
I'm team leader of the Indigenous Partnerships Youth Justice Research Team in Queensland. I'm picking up where Steve left off. The experience of youth detention and the overrepresentation of Murri young people in there. I'm wanting to ask this question of Steve and perhaps the superintendent or any who care to answer it. Do you have any thoughts or observations for us right now on what we're seeing happening, actions of the state government, Attorney General, the closing down of the 17 youth conferencing centres, locations where children's court magistrates could refer an early offender into a culturally appropriate elders, family and so on process, which had an astonishingly good record, and that's all a matter of record in the Attorney General's website. So that's happening, that's closing down. We've got boot camp starting up, experiment, trial run, one in Cairns, one in the Gold Coast. So, you know, what happens if you're somewhere between Cairns and the Gold Coast, if your country, and I think the country aspect of this is very important, so what happens to kids who offend in central Queensland, in Gladstone, in Emerald, any of that? And where do you see this going? That's my question. Where do you see it going, and what are your views about it?
Steve first.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. In regards to around the Capricorn and central areas, a lot of those boys that above that, they go up to a place called, in Townsville, Cleveland Youth Detention Centre. They'll probably have that boot camp there. Anything below that comes to us. The girls from up north and stuff, as far as I know, they haven't got a girls section up there in Cleveland, so they'll be coming down to us. Look, boot camp's one thing. It's at this point, it's there's pros and cons for it. Rather than you know, just wait for it, I think we need to educate, get more involved with our elders and our community members, that Aboriginal elders and people that are educated, and talk to them about.
But is this trend, is it going in the opposite direction? Is it really the argument? Is that stuff that we know is important, are we going in the opposite direction in this state?
Yes, definitely. Statistics, when I first started at the Brisbane Youth Detention Centres, they said statistics show that only 2% don't graduate to the big house or in the jails and stuff.
So 2%?
Less than 2%, yeah, less than 2%. And
so 98% will go to the big house?
Sadly, yes, that's correct. And again, Aboriginals overpopulate the place in there. And
98% of people who go to juvenile detention centres, 98% are almost guaranteed to go on to jail.
That was back in 2009, yep. Those statistics when I first started. And, you know, I had one boy, and I see it all the way through. If they did have culturally appropriate families and people coming in and willing to show them culture, not just culture as in dancing and that, but culture as in respect and honour, and you know, and show how to, you know, what the land means to them, what their families mean, what it means to have a family, and to be a responsible Aboriginal male, and how to role model themselves and what they want to be, get in touch with their dreams, what Sister Girl was saying up there, and how to work on building those dreams up, you know. I try to do it in there, but...
This whole idea of identity is a very strong theme.
It's the key.
It's a very strong theme coming through. Noel, yes, please do.
And unfortunately, I can't comment on government policy because it'll get back to them and I'll get into trouble, and I don't
Take the uniform off and we'll talk.
No, you wouldn't like what's underneath.
You never know.
Can I see... and well, if you insist. Let's make this show interesting. Look, I can tell you, and I'll go on from personal experience and some of my views. I remember as a young officer, based in Townsville for a number of years, and when I was up in Cairns as well too. Back then, if you had any juvenile offenders, they had to come down here to Brisbane. And I can remember transporting some of the young Aboriginal males and everything. And I recall it now, but perhaps I was too young, too stupid or too arrogant to sort of see it, but the common theme amongst all of them coming down from there was fear. was fear, and it manifested itself, and it still does to some degree. It manifested itself in this outward show of bravado, of cheek, you know, I don't give a shit, big deal, you know, I've been to the big house before, I'm going, and that sort of thing. And I think, well, looking back on it now, I'm like Tiger, I've learned late in life that you have a look at that. If you could turn that around to show, well, turn that into an interest in your culture. I think if the government were going to spend their money, and this is Noel Powell speaking, this isn't Noel the Copper speaking, if you could perhaps give them more cultural awareness. As you said, you've got tremendously rich heritage, you've got your traditions, you've got your dreamings, you've got everything that we as white fellas, we come to the table with nothing. We've got nothing when it comes to the cultures that the Aboriginal people hold. My personal opinion, if you could get them interested in that, teach them to become a strong man, teach them to become something that can take their culture and take their traditions forward. The way I always look at it is that the police and the courts are the end of the line. By the time people come to us, all this stuff that's before them has failed. And there's so much before that we can do to divert people away from us and ultimately the courts. And I think there's a massive gap that government in particular and a lot of organisations, and I mean we're partners in it as well too, we get the ability to help people along that path. So when they come to that age in their life where that's the right way, that's the wrong way, then you're on your own. If they go down that wrong way, someone give them a smack behind the ear and put them back on the right track.
We're running over time, and if you, with your indulgence, there's two more questions. I see Auntie up there wants to say something, so we just make sure she gets one, and then who was that? Yeah, the next one here. We'll get those two over and we'll wrap it up, so please forgive me.
It's Auntie Jean Phillips. I just want to say, look, we do a lot of work. I represent the church, and those of us in Aboriginal ministry, we do a lot of work, even around Logan. I've been doing it around Logan for years and years and years, as well as in other parts of Brisbane and around Australia. We in the church, people never ever come and ask our advice, and yet we do nearly all the funerals, all the suicides that's in our communities, all the tragedies that's in our communities, they fall on our desk. We've been doing prison chaplaincy for over 50 years here in Brisbane and in Sydney. But I want to throw out a challenge tonight to two groups. First of all, I really believe that governments have divided us as Aboriginal people. And we've set up a system, a class system amongst ourselves. Because out there in Logan, there's a lot of poverty, as well as in other parts of Australia. And people don't want to talk about poverty, because a lot of people are very, very comfortable. And we meet with a lot of the people out there that other people don't meet with. The other thing, I want to challenge non-Aboriginal people in the audience tonight. You come along to meetings after meetings. I want to tell you that all of you have benefited what's happened to Aboriginal people in this country. And what are you giving back to Aboriginal people? This is the message that we give to the Christian church. And I want to give it to you tonight. It's one thing to come and listen to all of these sort of stories and sad stories. But what are you doing to give something back? We can talk about reconciliation till the cows come home. We're not going to get reconciliation in this country until we've dealt with all of those big issues in this nation. We call it in the church the sin of this nation is the theft of this land. And very few people want to talk about that. The family's taken away, all of these big issues. And what are we doing about? Where is the voice? How many of you have spoken out about the stolen wages? A lot of those families down there in Logan and in Nala, their families, it's their stolen wages. How many of you have written and spoken out about that? There's all of these very big issues. Just recently, and Tiger knows this, we buried another lady who's been to these meetings fighting for her wages. We've got 3 people that I get calls from on the north side, very ill. It's their wages. You know, all of these tragedies. And you folk have to learn to speak up.
Thank you,
and to challenge and to do something.
Thank you, Annie Jean. Thank you. Last question or statement right here. This is our last one.
Thanks, Wesley. Chelsea Bond from Manala. I think,
Hey.
yeah. Some of the concerns is that perhaps justice is administered inconsistently for Indigenous people. So there is a sense that we're subjected to increased surveillance and scrutiny, yet the police are less responsive when we are considered the victims of crime. And I think there was a sense of that within our community historically, and it's been talked about. A good way to look at it is if we did a poll of this audience and looked at Indigenous and non-Indigenous people here, the proportion of people who would have experienced a street check would be considerably different. And some of you may not even know what a street check is, but it's to confirm the identity of people who are existing in public places, and Indigenous people tend to be scrutinised around that. My question is to what extent, Superintendent, do you see racism and classism a problem within the Queensland Police Service, and what can be done to build the capacity of officers to work more effectively in neighbourhoods that are considered poor and ethnically diverse?
Oh, it's always the last question, isn't it?
Mouthful, sorry.
It's always the... Yeah, there you go, Superintendent.
Oh, look, I'd be a fool if I say there aren't elements of racism within our organisation, just as I'm sure there's elements of racism amongst all the communities throughout Queensland, throughout Australia. And unfortunately, the police association with the Aboriginal people over the many, many years has sort of fostered a level of distrust and also resentment in some instances as well too. I can't apologise enough for that. But, I know, and from my perspective, I'll speak from the Logan perspective because that's where I've got is my young officers, when they come out of the academy, I get an hour session with them, talk about where they'll be working, what they'll possibly be encountering, what my expectations are, what the community expects of them, and what in turn they're going to seek from the community. What I preach to them all the time is it doesn't matter what situation you go to, whether you go to a house of an Aboriginal person, Island, Congolese, Sudanese, Burundian, any of the other nations that are there, the first thing you walk into that person's house, you have dealings with them, the first thing you present to them is respect. And this is something, I know it's a long road, but I think someone's got to take it, and I'm more than keen to sort of get that on. In some instances it is, and traditionally I know that the Aboriginal people, and particularly the youth, are overrepresented in the criminal justice system. They've been let down, unfortunately, over the years by a number of factors, not their own doing. It is that, unfortunately, the police in one area do get to know who the troublemakers are, and I'm not just saying they're Aboriginal people, they've got just as many Islanders, a hell of a lot of white people are just exactly the same, and they don't do their community any justice at all. Fortunately, a street check is a way of knowing who's actually moving around, who you are, what are you up to, and it's just an unfortunate aspect of life that we will continue to have involvement with young people, more so these days. If I can give you a statistic that 80% of or 34% of the crime in Logan is committed by 80 juvenile offenders.
How many, sorry?
80.
80.
80 are responsible for 34% of the crime in the Logan district. That covers your breaking and enters, you're stealing cars, you're stealing a range of things, your robberies. So it's with that in mind that we have to take steps, be they proactive or reactive. So I know what you're saying, I know where you're coming from. It's a long road that we've got to go to try and reconcile some of the incidents that happens from years ago, but you've got my assurance I will try, and I will make sure it happens, particularly to the police within Logan. They're dealing with a wide range of issues, a wide range of cultures. They've got to be more sensitive to the needs and the respect of people than any other police in the state.
It's a big question, and I think the theme of this talk was actually about postcode justice, and I think we have seen already there's an idea of location or dislocation, be it both cultural or geographic, that happens in certain centres, and that in those centres there can be greater crime or certain social issues that need to be addressed, and that what are the tools to start addressing them. The police have one set of tools, the community have another, families have another. What are those tools? How do we strengthen them? And how, as a community, do we move forward? If there is a postcode justice, it must start with us as individuals and our families, how we bond with each other and how we move forward. The police, as Noel said, is the last point. How do we make sure there are enough things ahead of them in these postcodes that we can make life, especially for young people, a much better place? Can you please join me in thanking the panel for an incredible discussion?
Thank you very much.
And I invite you to come and join us outside to have a bit of a chat. If you have asked a question and you're happy for that to be recorded and sent around because you've asked very important things, please, who do I point you to? Over here. Come see Sue, and we'll make sure we've got your bits and pieces. So please, we really want to make sure this can get out beyond this group. But thank you very much for spending the time and coming out in the wet, and we'll see you again very soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Well done.
Thank you.
Wes, can I say one thing for all of us?
Oh, wait, no.
All of us, be we First Nations or mainstream Australians, dominant culture, settler society. One thing we can all do from here tonight, learn the true history of this place we call home. My people need to learn it too. We need to know that we were not roaming aimlessly prior to colonisation. We need to know. But if everybody here, everybody that calls this place home, learns the true history of the place we call home, we will develop a better understanding for First Nations people. If we develop understanding, we will be able to develop respect, establish respect. If we've got respect, we've got a more harmonious coexistence.
Yep.
It's as simple as that.
Well said.
Thanks a lot.